Hello and welcome to the latest video lesson from me, Mr. H. Just a quick reminder to head on over to Mr. H Online, mrhonline.co.uk, where you'll find a couple of hundred other video lessons on a wide range of text, language and literature, all exam boards catered to little 13-minute video lessons, ideal for revision or topping up the knowledge or plugging the gaps in the knowledge that you may already have. Okay, let's crack on with the supernatural in Macbeth. Okay, so definition of supernatural: attributed to some force beyond scientific understanding or the laws of nature. Manifestations or events considered to be of supernatural origin, such as ghosts. Okay, so with relevance to the play, the supernatural is an integral part of the structure of the plot. It acts as a catalyst for the action and provides an insight into certain characters. Where does Macbeth go after Banquo's ghost has haunted him, tormented him? He decides to go back to the witches, and as a consequence of that visit to the witches, off he goes and commits a whole raft of other heinous crimes, notably the murder of Macduff's wife and children. We have the three witches, with Macbeth's own hallucination of the dagger and Banquo's ghost. Some people believe that there is a case to be made that Lady Macbeth is indeed the fourth witch, in cahoots with the three witches to control and corrupt Macbeth. I'll leave that up to you to decide. Okay, so areas to look at when considering the supernatural in Macbeth: characters, theme, context, narrative, consequences, Shakespeare's intentions and impacts on the audience. So which characters? Is it just the witches? What about Lady Macbeth as the fourth witch? Explore their influence on Macbeth and Banquo as well. And does it alter the way they think and the things they decide to do? Themes: ambition, power, appearance and reality, deception, evil. Context: Jacobean audience had a genuine belief in the supernatural. James I himself, the king at the time, wrote a book called Demonology on the very topic. Explore how they drive the narrative. How do they speed up the events in the play? Compare the fortunes of Macbeth and Lady Macbeth before and after the three witches entered their lives. Scotland too, for that matter. What lies behind Shakespeare's use of the supernatural? It's just to entertain? Is there a wider message? And remember, the Jacobean audience, as I've already said, had a real belief in the supernatural. They believed in witches, they believed evil spirits, even so far as the witches only appear when there's thunder. And they had no scientific explanation for what thunder was 400 years ago. So they actually believed it was a representative of evil. The thunder, an evil god voicing its displeasure over something or other. So context and setting. Now, this is quite a long video, this one will be, so do pause, take notes. Obviously don't just copy down every word. Take the salient points, the most important points, bullet point it, have your post-it notes alongside you, or however it is you've decided that is the best way for you to revise. So James I was fascinated in the supernatural, fearing them in equal measures, as would the Jacobean audience. He actually wrote a book on the topic called Demonology, as I've just said. And Shakespeare's inclusion of the witches is a clear nod to this interest. Remember, Shakespeare's trying to impress the king at the time, so he'd support his playhouse further. It was believed in the 17th century that thunder was representative forces of evil. I forgot this was on this screen. I've already told you this. Check the stage directions from Shakespeare himself surrounding the appearance of the three witches, and you'll see that they always appear in thunder. When shall we three meet again? In thunder, lightning, or in rain. Opening the play with the three witches sets the tone and atmosphere at the outset. It suggests that this play will be a play about evil forces. The added significance is that the witches are plotting to meet Macbeth, thus implicating him immediately in their business, even prior to the audience meeting him. Links to theme. I think I've covered three themes here. Ambition, the first one. So the witches tap into Macbeth's ambition, adding further fuel to his already burning black and deep desires. Even Banquo is curious as to why Macbeth does appear so rapt withal at the witches' greetings. Is it that Macbeth has already been thinking about becoming king? It is the witches greeting him as Macbeth that shalt be king hereafter that prompts Macbeth to write it to his wife. and so the central plot is set in motion, culminating with the death of Duncan and the tyrannous reign of Macbeth, and then ultimately his own downfall. The appearance of Banquo's ghost sees another example of how the supernatural is working against Macbeth, whilst he thinks they're on his side. The result of his paranoia and a fevered brain, it appears as soon as he learns that his attempts to have Banquo and his son murdered have failed, with his son escaping. Macbeth's response here is that if he is to remain as king, he must return to the witches, no longer putting faith in his wife, but faith in the witches, thus underlining their importance to him and them as drivers of the narrative. However, in his own words, damned all those that trust them, and yet here he is relying on them to guide his next moves. The witches talk in riddles, offering a series of paradoxes, for example, to Banquo in Act 1, Scene 3, declaring him lesser than Macbeth and greater. To Act 4, Scene 1, and the assurance that no man born of woman can harm Macbeth, which followed the warning that Macbeth should beware Macduff. Well, which is it? Macbeth interprets their utterances to suit his own interests, his own ambition. They don't tell him to do anything. He decides how to act based on what they say. More fool him. Appearance and reality. So looking at the use of language by the witches in the opening scene establishes that they should not be trusted, or that it is impossible to discern good and evil, that evil could be lurking behind a mask of goodness. And the quotation, fair is foul and foul is fair, hover through the fog and filthy air. What can you not do in fog? See clearly. You can't see people for who they really are or what they really are. This could apply directly to Lady Macbeth, who instructs Macbeth to look like the innocent flower that be the serpent under it. And also Macbeth, who acknowledges that false face must hide what false heart doth know. Duncan rewards Macbeth for his prowess on the battlefield against Norway, promising to reward him further. I have begun to plant thee. He also praises Lady Macbeth as his honoured hostess, and yet both are plotting to murder him in the castle he claims hath a pleasant seat. So this is their role in deceiving Duncan, the king. This mood and this action are all intertwined with the witches and their riddles and their prophecies. And theme of power. So in the thunder and lightning of the opening scene, the witches are predicting the future and controlling the weather, thus illustrating their power. Their presence sets the tone. They are promising to meet with Macbeth, implying a greater significance in their role overall, their overall role in the play, that they are name-checking the central character in the opening scene. They are drivers of the narrative. That's how powerful or significant they are. Macbeth acts on the basis of what they say. However, it is important to note, as I've said, that they don't actually tell him to do anything. It is he who determines how to act. So how powerful are they really? When Macbeth murders the king, strange phenomena occur throughout the land. Nature is disturbed. This could be attributed to the role of the supernatural, and in particular the consequences of engaging with it. Remember, divine right of kings. People at the time believed that the king was God-appointed and that there was a bloodline. So there was already a natural ancestor to the king. So Duncan had already said that his eldest son, Malcolm, the Prince of Cumberland, he was next in line. And that's the way it should be. Nature, natural order. Macbeth kills the king. He disturbs that natural order, goes against God, and nature turns on itself. We have reports of horses eating each other, or small birds attacking and killing large birds of prey. So what are the consequences of engaging with the supernatural, these evil forces? So consequences. A quick analysis of the Macbeths before the involvement of the witches and their subsequent lives results in the overwhelming conclusion that they should have left well alone and continued on the path they were on. Sure, it might have taken them longer to become king and queen, but they'd have been a lot happier in the process. Macbeth was a hero, revered and respected, and enjoyed a close, loving relationship with his wife. Life was good. A loyal servant to Duncan, brave and courageous, and perhaps most tellingly, pinpointed by Duncan himself for further greatness. I have begun to plant thee. He even acknowledges himself before killing anyone to further his ambition that if chance have me king, why chance may crown me. That perhaps he will become king in a more natural way. Just have a little bit of patience. But his ambition overwhelms him, and the witches have a key role in that. But the combination of his own greedy ambition, his ambition is his fatal flaw, His weakness and the witch's manipulation results in him dismissing this as a possibility. Now look at how things worked out for the Macbeths. Drifted apart, becoming isolated from each other and wider society, suffering guilt, paranoia, madness, feared and loathed throughout Scotland, and both end up dead, one through suicide, the other butchered and beheaded. Error, they shouldn't have done it. Okay, before we crack on to the quotations, and there's a few of them, just a quick point about Macbeth and the witches and how their relationship is established at the start. In particular, an observation about the language used. Let me ask you a question. No cheating. What's the very first line Macbeth has in the play? Go on. Any ideas? Put your hands up. So, foul and fair a day I have not seen. Remind you of anything? I quite like this page. How about the witches in the first scene? Fair is foul and foul is fair. Hang on. So, foul and fair a day. Fair is foul and foul is fair. Very similar. So what we have is this use of language instantly connects Macbeth to the witches. We've just heard about his heroic exploits on the battlefield and observed the high esteem in which he is held by his king. But this connection of his to the supernatural through language foreshadows that he is perhaps not the character we think he is at this juncture. So not only is it connecting him to the supernatural, but it also connects him to the theme of appearance and reality. Don't judge a book by its cover. All is not as it seems. Okay, so on to a few pages of quotations. Thunder and lightning, this is stage direction. Linking the witches with forces of evil. It's important, don't ignore the stage directions. Fair is foul and foul is fair, hover through the fog and filthy air, sets the tone as I've already explained. There to meet with Macbeth, they're predicting the future, the witches, so it suggests a degree of control, seeing into the future. The instruments of darkness tell us truths. This is interesting because Macbeth has clearly already thought about becoming king and perhaps killing Duncan to achieve this ambition. And here we have the witches greeting him as all hail Macbeth that shall be king hereafter. So he's like, okay, the instruments of darkness tell us truths. Quite Gothic imagery there as well. Instruments of darkness, the supernatural, all Gothic elements. Speaking in riddles, deliberately to confuse poor old Macbeth. For none of woman born shall harm Macbeth. Well, in that case, if I'm Macbeth, I'm safe. No one born of woman can harm me. Then there's the revelation that Macduff was born via cesarean section, so an unnatural birth. The riddles. Oh, hang on, back we go. What are these so withered and so wild in their attire, that look like the inhabitants of earth, and yet are on it? So a physical description of the witches, or an attempt at one, by Banquo. And if you look at various adaptations or productions of Macbeth, you'll see the witches being portrayed as anything from old women and nurses to puffs of smoke. So it's open to interpretation what they look like, but so withered and so wild in their attire. They look not like the inhabitants of earth, and yet here they are on it. The witches, or the supernatural, acting as a catalyst in the plot, driving the narrative. Macbeth has just realised that he's failed in his quest to kill Banquo and his son. Banquo is dead, but Fleance, his son, escaped. Banquo's ghost, Macbeth has hallucinated Banquo's ghost haunting him or tormenting him at the feast, Banquo's feast, or the feast in honour of Banquo. And his decision is not to confide in his wife, as he did for the murder of Duncan. It's no, I will tomorrow. To the weird sisters, more shall they speak. Even though he says, damned all those that trust them. Yeah, he's decided to trust them. So his reliance on the witches is clear, and he can't help himself. Despite knowing they're not to be trusted, he still places absolute faith in what they say, and acts accordingly. He's an idiot. This supernatural soliciting cannot be ill, cannot be good. He knows he's got this awareness, and yet he's almost powerless. He's contradicting nature and character. Come, you spirits that tend on mortal thoughts, unsex me here and fill me from the crown to the toe, top full of direst cruelty. I've kind of neglected Lady Macbeth up to this point, but this is her calling. This is her, often referred to as the fourth witch. This is her calling on these spirits that tend on mortal thoughts. Unsex me here, so take away my femininity. fill me from the crown to the toe, top full of direst cruelty. She's looking for enough strength of character to have the power, the courage to convince Macbeth to kill Duncan. So she's very much associating or aligning herself with the supernatural and evil. I think this might be the last screen of Quotations. Is this a dagger which I see before me? Macbeth hallucinating. A false creation proceeding from the heat-oppressed brain. Again, this is a troubled mind. Never shake thy gory locks at me. He's saying this about Banquo. Reflecting disorder and a fevered brain. Tormented. Oh, full of scorpions is my mind, dear wife, he says. And this is, you know, as a result of his involvement with the supernatural. Okay, final screen, final page. Exam relevance. Okay, can be incorporated into any question or part of the question on themes of the supernatural, of course. Appearance and reality, good and evil. Characters, Macbeth, Lady Macbeth, Banquo, the witches themselves. Setting, thunder, remember. Context, the Jacobean audience fearful of the supernatural, terrified of them. James I's fascination with them to the extent that he wrote a book about them called Demonology. Right, guys, loads there. Don't forget, head on over to mrhonline.co.uk for a load more of these really useful revision tools. Everything here that you'll need for top band. Did I just say top? I didn't mean to. Top band analysis and top grades in your results come August. Best of luck, guys. See you again.